All set. Please go ahead.
All right. Well, so thank you. So welcome to, thanks everybody, and thanks for joining. So welcome to our third part of our deep dive session. Today we're going to be going into how to make Data Cloud data actionable in Marketing Cloud. So I'm Tim Deiter. I'm a manager at Cervello. We are a Salesforce partner and build custom marketing automation solutions for our clients. In our agenda today, we're going to be diving into the use case. For those who've attended the other two sessions, you'll be familiar with the mobile app use case that Sandesh and Michelle set up so nicely. We're going to be going over this part of the solution, the data action, but quickly covering the ingestion unification part as well. And then in Data Cloud and in Marketing Cloud, we're going to be creating those actions in two different ways. We're going to be creating segments and creating activation targets, activations, creating a segment itself, and then creating a custom automation and journey, sending actual personalized emails in Marketing Cloud based off of that cool Data Cloud data. And then we're also going to be doing data actions, creating a calculated insight from start to finish to see how that's built, creating the data action targets and data actions, and then pulling in that data into Marketing Cloud as well, into journeys. We will do our Q&A session at the end, but I think I'll be pausing after the segment build as well for questions. So if you want to hold your questions for halfway through and to the end, that'd be great. Okay, so our use case. So Cervello Bank is a fictional company. They have launched a new mobile application that allows users to trade right on their phone. Super convenient, super handy. They've done an all-out marketing blitz, and a couple of months into the launch, they've noticed that signups and the trade volumes a lot lower than expected, like 50% lower, pretty significantly. And then the challenge is that they've noticed is that mobile data, because it's in an app, is kind of siloed. It's not something that they can easily integrate into Marketing Cloud to communicate with those users. The marketing communications options within the tool, the app itself, are limited. So it's a great use case for Data Cloud. Digging into the sales funnel, they break out their users in two groups. You're either a prospect or a trader. So a prospect is somebody who signed up for the account, to create an account. They may have linked their bank to the app, but they haven't done their first deposit. Within that prospect segment, they've noticed a certain sort of blocker or bottleneck. And that's for those users who've signed up, created an account, but they haven't linked their bank. And so once they notice when somebody links their bank, they quickly move into a trader and deposit. So that's our first segment we're going to be targeting today, is how we can motivate those no bank linkers and get them to link their bank. The second segment is in the trader group. Now, these are people who've deposited money into their account. And they've also noticed another bottleneck is to try to get that first trader group that made that deposit, but they really need to make their first trade. Once they do that first trade, they become a long-time customer. So that's our second segment that we're going to look to try to pull in from Data Cloud into Marketing Cloud to try to get them to motivate to send that first trade. So let's talk about where we are today. So in Sandesh's segment, he covered the ingestion part. Now for this model, we're pulling data from all different types of sources into Data Cloud. So like we talked about, that challenge of the data in the mobile app, we're pulling that right into Data Cloud so that we can access that data. We're also pulling in enterprise data from the Cervello Bank enterprise that's coming through the S3 bucket. Our customer or prospect database of record is Salesforce Sales Cloud. So we're pulling that in. Today, we're going to be showcasing that contact as the customer of record. And then also Marketing Cloud, we're pulling in that subscriber data to align that subscriber key and the engagements. Those are all the different data sources that Sandesh took us through and the different unique ways to ingest that data. And then in Michelle's session, we're taking all four of those data points, pulling them into, thanks to Sandesh, pulling those data in We want to map that data, identify those unique key.
Tim, sorry to interrupt you. I think we lost your audio. Tim, can you hear me? Okay, sorry everyone. Excuse me. Can everyone hear me though?
Yes, Sandesh.
Okay, thank you for confirming. Let me try and ping Tim.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I think I lost audio. Thank you, Sandesh, for reaching out to me. I apologize for that. Can someone tell me where I left off? Um, did I drop off around the segment part?
From here,
Okay, fantastic.
data ingestion.
Okay, so we've got, oh, data ingestion. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lakshmi. Okay, so just quickly covering what Sandesh had covered on his section. We're pulling in data from all these different data sources. So like we said, the challenge was that mobile app data is siloed. And so we're going to be pulling that into Data Cloud. We're also pulling in enterprise data from the bank itself via the Amazon S3 bucket. Our customer database of record is Salesforce Data Cloud. And in this example today, we're going to use the contact object to pull that into Data Cloud. And then from Marketing Cloud, we're going to align the subscriber key to that contact ID. and the email engagement. So those are all the different data points and data sources that Sandesh took us through. In Michelle's section, this is where she took all of that data that Sandesh was bringing in, mapped that data to identify those unique keys so that we can unify this individual and align it to a specific subscriber key that we're used to in Marketing Cloud and create those unique segments. So for our use case today, we're going to be creating those two different paths, the segment and the calculated insight. So if we take a look at the top part, we have our no bank link segment. So we're going to be, our source of data in Data Cloud is that unified individual data mapped object. We're going to be pulling that, creating a segment. And that's going to create, we're going to identify an activation target, which we're going to link to Marketing Cloud. That's where we're going to determine where that data is going to be driven to. The activation is going to determine the subscriber key and all those data values that we're going to use to personalize that email. Now that's all going to be driven, and once it's published, it's going to be populated into a data extension in Marketing Cloud. We're going to create a query and an automation to extract that data, send them through a journey, and then personalize the email. And in addition to that, we're going to create a custom attribute that's going to leverage that Data Cloud data to help determine the path as they move through the journey. On the other side, for those first trade segment, we're going to create a calculated insight from start to finish. Now, what that's going to do, it's going to identify the, it's going to filter all of that data from that unified individual. It's going to identify the subscriber key and all those data points that are going to be needed to send that email. Now, that's going to be populated in a data extension in an API entry event that's going to go directly to a journey in Marketing Cloud. We're going to also create a data action target and a data action object that's going to feed into the entry event of that journey, and we're going to send that through personalized information in the email. Okay, so we're going to go right into the platform now, and we're going to start by building out that segment. So we're going to start with the segment. We're going to go to the activation target. We're going to go into the activation, which is going to assign those subscriber keys and the attributes. We're going to publish that data. We're going to be able to see that data come through in Marketing Cloud just to validate the data in Marketing Cloud. And then we're going to create that custom automation, show that dynamic content, and then show in the journey how we're going to create those different custom paths. So let me hit escape here. We're going to go into Data Cloud, and let's go into the segment tab, and we're going to create our segment. So let's click new. And I've got a notepad here that I'm going to be using just to name the specific assets as we're building here. So we're going to call this segment name. Hold on. There we go. Let's call this no bank link test. And let's just, I've got a default description here. We're just going to paste that in so that we can have an idea of what we're doing here for description. So first off, we want to select our data space. In our example, we just have one space. In your environment, you might have multiple different data spaces. And then we're going to be segmenting on the unified individual. So for this segment, we're going to probably be really focused on that unified individual. If we find success with that unified individual, we might broaden out that segment a little bit to just a general individual. But for this purpose, let's just stick with the unified individual. It's going to give us our best success. Our publish type, there's two different options here. Because we want to send out that email relatively quickly, we're going to be looking at the last 7 days worth of engagement data. So we're going to use the rapid publish. And then for our schedule, these are the options that you have for your segment, which are pretty good. So we're going to choose 1 hour. That's pretty nice frequency. We'll start that today. We'll start that at 8:30 this morning. Maybe we'll be able to see that get populated by the time we're done. And then let's just select the end of the year to keep that refreshing. Hit save. Okay, so this gives us our base setup for a segment. And now what we want to do is we want to identify and filter out this entire audience. So this identifies 1,200 different unified individuals. And now we're going to segment that down a little bit smaller based on the segment we're looking to create. So there's this field called account terms agreement that determines whether they have an account or not. So we just literally select any of those fields that are in that unified individual and drag that over to this screen. We're going to click on this pencil and we're going to select true, hit done. Now, when we hit save, it's going to refresh that population. It's going to reduce it down from 1,200 probably to a much smaller group. Again, we could target more people, users that don't have an account, but for this purpose, we're going to really try to nail down and get the most specific segment we can. And then the next criteria or filter is bank link. So let's pull over this bank link. We want that set to a value of false. Let's hit done, let's hit save. And again, we can see that population refresh and that should get reduced even further. Okay, so now we're down to 22 groups, a really targeted segment. I want to show this functionality one more way. So we're not 100% sure if bank link as a value could also be empty. So we're going to pull over bank link again. We're going to drop it in here. Now, when you do that, you can see these boxes open up. So we're going to click here. We're going to change this to an or. And this gives us an option for our segment to be either that bank link is either false or it has no value. So there you go. That's how you do create a basic segment based on what we're looking to create in our use case today. We're going to click done. And that segment is created. So it's going to be publishing and at 8:30. It shows you the 1 hour schedule. So with that done, now we're going to create an activation target. So let's go under our menu. We're going to create activation target. We're going to click a new activation target. So again, this is where we're going to determine where this data is going to be posted to. So we're going to select Marketing Cloud. There are also some external platforms that can be chosen as well. So let's select Marketing Cloud. Again, we're going to choose the name just to make this consistent and description. So let's just drop that in there. And okay, we're going to select our data space. Again, that is the default data space. We're going to click next. This is where you connected your Marketing Cloud environment. We're going to select the business unit for Marketing Cloud. And there you go. There's your activation target. Now to our last step, which we're going to create the activations. So let's go into activations. We're going to create a new activation. Same space. We're going to create our segment, which is we have quite a few segments. So it's no bank link test. Let's find that right segment. No bank link test. You can see there's a 22 in there. The activation target, let's choose the no bank link test as well. It's just refreshing. The activation membership, we're going to use the unified individual. Again, that's the more targeted, more focused individual within Data Cloud. Here we have the options to use either email or SMS. We're going to choose email for our use case today. This is going to determine the path to the email address. And again, this was covered by Michelle's session. You can also have the ability to toggle different sorts of priorities for that email address. Obviously for Marketing Cloud, this is our business unit. We're going to probably want to have this to be at the top, and that is the default, which is nice to see. And then we're going to hit next. This is where they've, based on the data mapping, should set up in your segment the appropriate subscriber key and email address. And then if that's set up correctly, all we're going to do is add the attributes, the different data points that we're going to be using to personalize this email. So for this email, first of all, we're probably going to want to bring over that bank link. So we have that data populated. We could bring over account number. That's probably going to be helpful given that they have created an account. Let's bring over the account created date. Let's bring over their first name for personalization. And that's probably it. So very easy to select all these different attributes from that unified individual if it's set up, if your data is set up correctly. And again, this is just going to populate different fields in the data extension. So let's hit save. Let's hit next. And then I'm just going to go through the exercise to make sure that I name this correctly because we have quite a few of these in our system. So let's do our name there. And then just always good just to add a description, just so you know what the specifics are on that. Got some options here for the refresh type, kind of like the full refresh versus an incremental. You might have to use incremental if your data sizes are large. Hit save. All right. So then it's creating the activation. Let's go back to our segment. And we're going to publish this segment. So this is going to, now that we've created the activation, you can see the activation automatically gets associated with that segment. It's now going to populate that data in Marketing Cloud in that data extension. So it's going to take a few minutes to do that. So what we're going to do instead is let's go right into the Marketing Cloud environment. We're going to take a look at another data extension that has that data populated. So if we go into Marketing Cloud, we're going to go under the Data Extensions tab under in the Email Studio. We're going to navigate down to our shared folder, and let's click on, this is where the data extensions will get populated in the shared folder. Let's click on that data extension. Let's take a look at what's been populated here. So we've got some of those basic essentials to send out the email. We've got the subscriber key, we've got the email address, and these are the different values that we have populated using the activation here set up in this data extension. Again, this is in a shared folder, so we're not able to edit this data extension. Would be nice if we could add like a created date. So each time that got populated, it might be able to populate that data, although it's being refreshed all the time, so that created date might not have some value. Let's take a look at these records just to take a look at the data that's coming from Data Cloud, just so that we can align on a couple of different points. Most importantly is the subscriber key. So you can see in Data Cloud, because we have that unified individual, because we've set up the data correctly, our subscriber key is what we're familiar with, which is a contact ID. So we've got a couple here. You can see an example that might not have been unified to that contact ID. So we can look back into the data and look to address that. But it's super important how these can work together and make sure that your data is set up correctly, because you don't want to keep, for every time you send out one of these sends, you have a different subscriber key. You're just going to keep creating duplicate contacts for each one of those actual subscribers. So very important to align your data set before integrating into Marketing Cloud. And we see all that data coming through, the email address and all that data itself. So now once this is brought into Marketing Cloud, what we're going to want to do is create an automation to extract this data from this data extension so that we can drop them into a journey itself. So if we go into Automation Studio, we've got a automation already set up, pre-populated here. Let's go into this query and just take a look at what we've got. So it's a relatively straightforward query. What we're doing is pulling from that data extension in our from statement. We're also outputting all those values that we need to personalize that email, obviously the subscriber key and the email address in order to send it, and then some of those data points. We're just pulling out a specific subscriber key in our where clause so that we can test it. And then the last thing that we're doing is we're joining the data extension that we're using for the journey to suppress it from future queries. Because this segment's going to be refreshed on an hourly basis, probably run this automation like once a day to send out the email to those to get linked. we're going to not want to include those that have been sent before. So we're just left joining that data extension and using the, we're only pulling them in when that value is null. So an easy way to suppress, to dedupe to prevent those sends. You can also in the journey itself use a no reentry in your journey settings. So let's go into the journey itself and see how we've fed in this data and actually sent emails. So if we navigate over to Journey Builder, and click into this journey. Okay, so here's that data extension that we're populating from our query. We've got a relatively straightforward journey just for testing purposes, but there is some complexity here. Let's click into this first email so that we can see how the data works. The data is being pulled in from those data extensions to not only send that email, but to personalize it with that data cloud data. So if we go into the email itself, and we're going to go into the content, and it's relatively straightforward from an AMP standpoint. So because we're using that query to populate all those values from Data Cloud, all we need to do is set those to variables using the attribute value function. So it sort of normalizes the data. So for those 4 different data points that we're using, actually 3, we're using first name as a data point for greeting, which you can see that being outputted here with the V function, the account number, the account created date. We're also using the format date AMP script function that just formats the date because sometimes that date can come out a little bit wonky. We've also are going to include the subscriber key in here. Something we haven't built out today, but something you could build into is using Marketing Cloud to validate that data. If your contact ID is getting refreshed on the CRM a little bit more quicker than it is in Data Cloud, you could do a lookup to that contact ID and pull in items like first name and some of the data points from the actual CRM system. Because in CRM, that syncing in the Marketing Cloud 15 minutes versus the subscriber information from Data Cloud's an hour. So if we just do a quick preview on that data extension, we can see the personalization coming through. So relatively straightforward execution on this email. We just want to say, reach out to Michelle, say, thank you for joining. Here's the account number. Here's when that account was created. And hopefully driving her to, with some sort of incentive to link her bank. There you go. And that's those cool data points that are coming in right from Data Cloud being visualized in Marketing Cloud. One last thing I wanted to point out as far as functionality that we're doing and leveraging in this journey is this decision split. So what this decision split's doing is, we're sending this journey as a multi-email journey use case. So if Michelle doesn't respond to email number 1, we're going to want to continue to follow up with her to try to get her to bank link. So after a certain period of time, just for testing purposes, we've got 3 minutes here, but say it's like, 7 days or a couple of days, we're going to want to check to see, hey, did Michelle link her her bank or not, and use a decision split to do that. And as we know in Journey Builder, when that subscriber enters in the journey, their data is stale, right? That bank link data is not going to be updated in that data extension. So we need to find another way to pull in that data, something that's refreshing that data on an ongoing basis. So what we can do is use a custom attribute in Contact Builder. So let me just quickly navigate to that. It's going to pull in that subscriber information from that segment. So if we click here, we've created a no bank link attribute in Contact Builder. And we're attaching it to that data extension that's getting populated, getting updated from Data Cloud on an hourly basis. So back in Journey Builder, all you need to do is to use that to check, if we find Michelle in that date extension using that custom attribute, then we know that her bank link is still false. If she's not in that date extension, then she's going to get kicked out and moved on maybe to a different journey. So there's another way that you can use the data in a data cloud to influence different journey paths, not only to personalize the email, but to help influence where that person should go in the journey itself. And that pretty much wraps up the segment. So I just wanted to check to see if anybody had any question. Oh, maybe okay, maybe Sandesh is answering questions. See if there's anything in particular.
So I see one question here, Tim, by Lakshmi.
Oh, thank you.
We already did the segmentation in the data cloud, and those records to SFMC shared data extension. If that is correct, then why another automation to prepare the data extension for the journey source?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So, because that data is in a shared data extension and it's going to be updated on an hourly basis, you're ideally going to want to leverage, keep that data in itself in that data extension just to be populating and refreshing. It's sort of your data, your segment within Marketing Cloud. I don't know if you could actually use that data extension as an entry point for a journey, but it could cause some problems. I mean, one, if it's in a shared folder, you might have different business units that are going to be accessing that data. So having it being isolated as a segment itself, and then creating another query gives you the ability to, first of all, segment that data to pull in specifics about it, gives you a little bit more control, like suppressing the journey. So experiment with it. If you're a single business unit and you can make that work, you probably could just have that be attached to the journey. But I think for best practices, and again, this exercise isn't too complex to create a relatively simple query just to query that shared data extension. But this would probably give you a little bit more control of that data and keep that segment data on its own, just populating and used as a segment. Did that answer your question, Lakshmi?
Yes, Tim.
Okay, great question. Love it. Any other questions related to segments before we move on to data actions?
I don't see any other questions.
Okay. Thank you, JV. Perfect. Well, we can always ask them at the end. All right, so let's go back into our deck and let's go into our next section, which is going to be the data action. So in order to, it's a little bit more complex, a little bit more code. It's going to create a little bit more complications from a SQL standpoint, but worth exploring and worth considering. Before we get started in Data Cloud, we're going to try to understand the data model a little bit, which is going to drive our thinking. And then we're going to build a calculated insight, which is going to create this API entry event data extension to align the data so that when we can create a data action target and a data action to publish that data into Marketing Cloud. So in this example, we're going to be firing these right into a journey, but we need to do some data alignment in order to do that. And then we'll be good to see how that data comes through and then how that might be different in the email content itself. So let's just take a look at the data that Michelle and Sandesh set up, because it's something that we're going to need to consider as we're building out this calculated insight. So our primary data source is this unified individual. So you saw that in the segment. This has got all that information that's got all the different details of the name, the bank information, the bank link, and all of that. In this example, it's also going to include the deposit amount to determine how much they've been deposited so that they can make that first trade. So it's got all that great data, but what we also need from this calculated insight is a way to get to that subscriber key and the email address so that we make sure that we're sending it to the right person. So in order to do that, we have to skip through a couple of DMOs in order to get to that data. So from the unified individual DMO, we need to go to this unified link individual, and we're making that relationship between this unified individual ID. Once there, that's going to give us a path to the contact point email, which has the subscriber key and the email address. Unfortunately, that's in two different DMOs. And so in this first DMO, the bridge, that has the subscriber key, and that is actually the ID that we're linking from this link individual into this bridge object. And then finally, we're going to link these two objects together, which is going to allow us to provide us with the email address. So the subscriber key is going to come from the bridge contact point email into Marketing Cloud. The email address is going to come from the derived DMO here. And then all the personalization data points are going to come from that unified individual. All right, let's take a look at how that all comes together in our calculated insights. So we're going to create a new calculated insights. We've got a couple of really cool options here. We kind of like the create in SQL option, but for our use case today, we're going to go through the WYSIWYG builder, which is kind of cool, kind of fun to play around in. So we're going to select our data space. Again, we only have one. That's our default data space. We're going to select create with builder. We're going to do a calculated insight. And I just have to zoom out here because the screen doesn't allow me to select an object. Okay, I guess that selected the object for me. Let me zoom back in. Okay, so now we want to select our primary data source. And that's going to be the unified individual. So when we click on that, we can see all those amazing data points. We know we've selected the right data source. Now that we've got this collected, we want to start joining those different DMOs to get to that path to the subscriber key and the email address. So we're going to click on this plus, we're going to hit join. And now we're going to be able to select our next DMO to link to this, this data set. So we're going to try to find that unified link individual. And we're going to use that unified individual ID. We're going to click next. And that should add this to our canvas. And it may, depending on if the relationship has that same field in both of those data sources, it'll automatically populate these this section. So we've already got that populated, which is nice. Because we're using a waterfall flow to link all of these DMOs together, we're going to use a right join versus a inner join. And because those two individual IDs are already exist in both of those data extensions, we don't have to create an additional the on statement in the query, but we will in our next join. So let's hit apply. Let's save this as a draft just so we don't lose it because it can time out. We're going to use this name. And let's use this description as well. Let's hit save. And that'll kick us out into the calculated insight. We're going to hit edit. And we should go right back into that canvas. Okay, we've got our two data sets. Now we need to add a third and then the fourth. So we're going to do another join. This is to the contact point email object. It is the bridge. So we're going to scroll down to contact point email. We're going to select that. Hit next. And then if we go back to our data schema, it's a little bit probably hard to see. And that's not helping. What we're going to do for the link individual, we want to link the individual ID to the contact point email ID. Let's go back into our calculated insight. We're going to do a right join. This is where we're going to set up that on statement, the relationships between these two data sources. So we're going to want to scroll down. When you've joined those two data sources, it gives you all those fields to choose. So we're going to use that individual ID. And then for the for this data set, we're going to use the contact point email ID. And for some reason, it creates this invalid, which we can just delete. And then we're going to enter a prefix, which we're just going to use contact here. Hit apply. Okay, now we've got our third data set up. Let's add one more. Sometimes this times out. Let me just save that as a draft. I might have to come back in here. I click edit. All right, and then let's do our fourth join. Again, this is to the derived contact point email. This is going to provide us with the email address. So we're going to go here to contact point email for the unified individual. There's that email address. Click next. And I think because these two data sources, the two contact point emails, they have this relationship already, it automatically comes up. We're going to hit right join. We're going to hit apply. And that should work. That should complete our 4 different data sources based on our data model. Now we're going to want to create the aggregate. This is going to allow us to create all the different attributes that we're going to populate in the data extension. Because it's a calculated insight, it asks you to populate a value to sum. So in this example, we're just going to sum the total deposit amounts. And we're going to call this deposit sum, and that'll be in our data extension. Probably not going to use that data point, but it's a requirement for calculated insight. Okay, now in this section, this is where we're going to want to add specific values that are going to get populated in the data extension. So we go to dimensions. The first thing that we're going to want to identify is the subscriber key, which is that individual ID. So we're going to click on that individual ID. We're going to call this subscriber key. Very important, we want to know which value is going to create that subscriber key so we get that alignment on the Marketing Cloud side. Let's add another value. Let's go find email address so that we can send out that email. Again, these are just going to be setting up values on your data extension. And then we're going to just do one more value just to show a personalization data point. So let's use that deposit amount. Let's go deposit amount. There we go. Okay, so those are going to identify the different data points are going to be in your data extension. And then let's hit apply. And then one last thing is we want to create a filter because we don't want to pull in all of these subscribers. So we want to filter in those that have a deposit amount that is greater than 0. And we could add other filters like they've not done a first trade. So let's just apply that for now. Let's hit save and run. Again, we had already created the name. We're going to set the schedule. So this is every 6 hours, so a little bit no difference from a timing standpoint for data actions. We'll set this to go off at 9 o'clock and the end date will leave August 20th. That's fine. I'll hit enable. So this is going to create the calculated insight, and the most important part of this calculated insight, it's going to create the data points in Marketing Cloud that we're going to need to use to populate the data extension for the API entry event or the entry source. So that was covered in an earlier session in the bootcamp. The path to determine the data extension values you're going to want to use in a calculated insight, you're going to use the start of this API name. combined with the different field names that you had created in your attributes. Let's go ahead and do that just so we can have that data ready. So in a notepad, I'm just going to create a couple of these different data points. So there's that API. Let's just paste that a couple of times. And let's go into that subscriber key field. Let's make sure that we've got this API name for the subscriber key. We're just going to add an underscore and then paste in that value. We're going to use email address as the next value. Paste that in here as well. And then last but not least, let's just use that one data point, which was deposit amount. And here we go. Perfect. So those are the data points that we're going to want to build on the Marketing Cloud side. So let's move over to Marketing Cloud. In order to create that API event, we have to create that before we create the next step, because it's going to want to determine where you're populating this data. So if we go into Marketing Cloud, and we're going to go into our data extension folder, and we're going to want to create a new data extension. So we're going to name this Drive First Trade. Always good to fill out the description, but I think we're running short on time, so we'll just keep going. In our data extension, we're going to want to copy all those values that we're pulling from the calculated insight. So let's start off with our first value. Subscriber key usually will hopefully be only 18 characters, but we don't know our data 100%, so let's make that a little bit bigger. We're going to make this as nullable just because we're not sure if the data is always going to be populated as well, just to get the data running. Let's do email address. We're going to set this to an email address field. Again, make that nullable. And last but not least, let's do our deposit amount. Let's make that a number. We're going to want to select the subscriber key as the related to the subscribers on the subscriber key. So we're using that, not the email address. We'll click create. We've got our basic data extension for our entry event. Let's go into Journey Builder. Under entry sources, you're going to want to create a new entry source. So we're going to use an API event here. The name, we're going to again copy the same name so we get this correct. We'll add description another time. There's the API event key. We're going to want to select the data extension we just created. So that's in hands-on, data cloud. And that was Drive First Trade Test. We don't need to add any filters, and done. Okay, there we go. We've got our entry event right here. Now we can do is quickly create a journey. We can, not only do we have to create an entry source in order for this to work in Data Cloud, you actually have to create and activate a journey in order for it to see it. So let's create this new journey. I'm going to use this same name. We're going to pull over this API event. We're going to select our API event that we just created. Just going to do a very simple journey just to get it activated. We're going to create a decision split. In that decision split, we're just going to say if email address is not null. So we're going to go to our data extension data that we had just created. We're going to say is not null, just to pull in that data. Summary, we can name this email is not null, and done. And we've got a basic journey that we can activate and pull in data. Let's just change these to 1 minute, just so that data doesn't sit there for a day. Let's hit save. And let's organize that. Let's put that in our data cloud folder. And then last but not least, in our journey settings, let's just do reentry only after exiting. Okay, so with that created, let's activate this journey, and this will make it visible on the Data Cloud side. So it's doing its validation. Yeah, it's missing message activity, but it should be fine to activate. Okay, so now with this is activated, let's get back into Data Cloud, and now we're going to create our data action target. So we're going to select new. Let's name this based on the same naming convention that we've been using all along. The target type. So you have some options here, and maybe in our hands-on session, we could build out a Salesforce platform event, which is kind of cool because you can populate an object in CRM and trigger maybe a campaign. But for this example, we're going to use Marketing Cloud. We're going to select our business unit. Here we have two different options. We're using the API event today. And this is where we should be able to find that drive first test API event. And there it is right there. That's populated just now. So we're going to be able to select that as our API event. So there we go. There is our data action target, relatively straightforward. And last but not least, let's create our data action. Now that we have this all together, we just created this data action target. Click next. Same thing, default space, object type. We're going to use our calculated insight. We're going to select the first trade test. Subscriber key, let's use the subscriber key aligned there. Don't really have a related object that we need to use today. We're going to use this whenever a record is created or updated. You could add additional filters here, but again, we're handling most of that filtering on the calculated insight. And every time it's updated, we'll leave that selected. Let's use the same name and then description. We'll just leave that blank for now because of time. All right, so there it is. Our data action is created. We go over to our calculated insights. Let's click on that and let's publish that calculated insight. That should fire the data action and pull that data into that API event. And then just real quickly, before we go back into Marketing Cloud to see how that's visualized, you can, once it's created, once it's published and that data is populated, you can take a look at the data in Data Explorer just to see if everything is coming through correctly. So let's take a look at a different calculated, sorry, let's choose the one that's got a little bit more refined data. This is another one that was set up the exact same way. So see here, we can see the subscriber key. We're seeing a lot of the same contact IDs. We do see some other subscriber keys, which we could clean up that are not contact IDs. We're seeing that all of these records have deposit amounts, but they may, have not done that first trade. So you can really, visualize the data before it gets sent into Marketing Cloud, into the journey. So it's kind of cool to see that in Data Cloud. Okay, let's go quickly. I know we don't have a lot of time. Let's go quickly into the journey. I just want to show you the email, the variation on this. Again, it's going to just fire them right into the journey if your data extension and your entry event is set up correctly. When we click into the email itself, it's slightly different as far as those data points, but relatively straightforward. So if we click into that email, we go into the content. You can see that the data extension values are based on that calculated insight API name and those attribute values. So it's not something you can create on your end. It's something that's driven by the Data Cloud, but same execution. We are setting those variables based on those data extension values that are getting populated. And then if we do a quick preview and test, we should see that data get populated. So if we go into data extensions and we're going to go into Data Cloud, and I think it's under this record. And we can see first name, account number, deposit amount, all those personalization points that are coming through via the data action. Okay, so that wraps up data actions. I know that was a lot. I apologize for the speed on that. Let me just quickly wrap up with a summary and then we'll go to questions. So again, hopefully that gave you a good idea of the use case, an overview of where we were sit as far as those data actions, two different data actions in Marketing Cloud. And again, we covered creating both a segment and a data action in Marketing Cloud and seeing that data visualized in Marketing Cloud in really three ways. One, to populate a subscriber so they get sent a communication. Two, personalizing that data right from the Data Cloud data. And then three, using that Data Cloud data to influence different journey paths in Marketing Cloud. So that's data actions in Marketing Cloud. So I'll open up for questions.
Thanks much, Tim. So everybody, please post your questions in the chat. And earlier, I see one question here. While creating the activation, what is the meaning of any or primary email? So when we are selecting the email, select any versus primary, what is going to be the difference?
Okay, let's go into activation. We'll take a look at that. So we're going to the right screen. Let's go into the background test. And let's edit. And maybe I need to create a new one just to get to that screen. It doesn't seem to be any editing, so let me just quickly create a new one. Let's see. Select email. Okay. Was this the question as far as the priorities to order? What's detailed here as far as the different sources for the email?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I think this is set up in the configuration in Data Cloud. It may be defaulting to Marketing Cloud, but you can use email address from other sources if you wanted to set that up. But I think, in this example, your primary source would be Marketing Cloud. And from a priority standpoint, if it is Marketing Cloud, you're probably going to have an email address. So it'll probably be the one that's chosen. But if there wasn't an email address in Marketing Cloud, you could select a backup default option to pull an email address from a different source. For instance, it could come from the enterprise data that's coming from Cervelo Bank, or it could, if you're capturing email address from the application, you could select that to choose the email address. But given that Marketing Cloud is the database of record, you probably want to choose Marketing Cloud as your primary source there.
Thank you. And the next question, how to prevent the unified profile from using the non-18-digit keys as subscriber key during the segmentation or activation or data action to Marketing Cloud?
That's a great question. I think that's something that we're working through as well. It's not easy. And I think that's something that we could put down as a great exercise in our hands-on session to take a look at the data that we see in the data extension and to that point and find a way to identify those subscribers and find out for this particular subscriber what happened here. Let's go back into the mapping. Let's go take a look at our unification logic. Why did, if it was a unified individual, if we're pulling it from that DMO, why is it that a subscriber key of a contact ID is even present here? So I think it's going back into your logic and your model. Michelle might have set up a backup that if a contact ID wasn't present to populate it. So I've looked back into that logic to do that, but I think it'd be fun just to, we'll mark that down as a potential exercise in our hands-on session to proof that out.
That helps. So moving on to the next one. Let the questions here. I don't see anything else. Yeah, I missed
Okay,
some of
cool.
the things that were posted earlier. But as of now, let's see. So I think we're good, Tim.
While you're looking. Okay, great. And the one thing I'll just throw into the chat, we did create a walkthrough in more detail of this segment part of what we just covered today. So this goes through step by step, talks about the different segments, a little bit more of an overview, but literally goes through how to create the segment, step by step. As the, if you're looking for this YouTube video as it's getting published, you can come back and go and through this exact exercise if that's helpful. And again, thanks to JB and her those amazing hands-on sessions. We're going to be looking to do a hands-on session with inviting a builder to do this exact exercise, building out the segment, the data action, all of that in upcoming sessions, probably around the end of June, early July.
Yeah, as Tim mentioned, we do have the hands-on sessions happening on Thursday, 8 a.m. And the regular deep dive sessions will happen on Tuesdays, 8 a.m. So you would see a lot of events created, but if you are specific on attending the deep dive or attending hands-on, you can check the schedule there. Every Tuesday, it's for the deep dive, and every Thursday, it's for the hands-on. I have one more question here, Tim. So why do we need to create nullable email and subscriber key attributes in SFMC data extension?
Oh, on the data actions and why are they nullable?
Right. So those are kind of required fields. So they will have the data for sure. So why do we need to create them as nullable?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we're sort of to get this data populated for this exercise, just easier for us to get those nullable. It's a good point that they should be they should always be populated. So when you're doing your setup, yeah, it would probably be best practices for subscriber key and email address to be, to not be nullable. The one thing, as we all know, that can break automations if for some reason email address isn't populated or subscriber key isn't populated. So when you're pulling data from, I'm not going to call Data Cloud a third-party data source, but it's it's outside of Marketing Cloud. And if it's something that's running a regular process, if that process breaks because one of those data points, one of those records, 1,000 records, and one of those records does not have a subscriber key for some reason, the entire batch fails, then that one can kick out, all 999 that should have gone through successfully. So it's just something for you to monitor and be aware of, and depending on your use case. But yeah, it was a really good point by the caller. You'll definitely want to make sure that your data is aligned so that subscriber key and of course that email address is always there in that data extension. But it's never really an easy, which way do you go? Do you have it break and then fail, or do you have it be nullable? So, great question.
Awesome. Thanks much, Tim. I think those are all the questions, and we can call it a wrap. So thanks everyone for joining and also staying longer. So the session recording will be uploaded at the earliest possible to the channel, Trailblazing Together or @MC Learning Camp. So you can go back and rewatch this if it is required. So the slide deck as well, I will be linking that in the description part. So you can check the link of the slide deck there. We hope to see you again in the hands-on session or in the next deep dive session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, JP.